Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well radio program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also find us online in a couple of different places, katb.org, as well as our Facebook page at Living Well Radio. And don't forget to look us up on iTunes, looking up Living Well. We'll be excited to connect with you in any one of those places. And we thank you for joining us with our show today. We are so excited about our guest, aren't we, Betty?
Yes, we are. Very excited.
She has come to us from a long ways away, hasn't she?
Long ways away.
Why don't you introduce our guest for us today?
Our guest today is Allison Turnbull. We've known her for a long, long time, but she just got back and I think just finished her time as a missionary in Ethiopia. Is that correct, Allison?
That is correct. 3 years.
But we don't want to start there.
Okay.
We want to start a little bit earlier. We want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you came to want to work with children. I know you have a great love for children.
I do.
But tell our audience how that came about.
Well, I started working with kids as early as 8 years old.
8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. Yeah, something like that.
Both early.
I started this morning early, too.
When I was 8, and my dad saw me on the ferry moving up to Alaska, and I had all the little kids behind me, and I toured them around the ferry boat in a little ducky line, and he was like, she is going to work with kids.
You were a tour guide then.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it.
You're just a magnet for them, weren't you? Your energy
yes.
and...
Yeah, and still am. I love working with them, and lots of different age groups. Yeah.
What's your favorite age group?
My favorite age group is probably 5 to 8. That's probably my favorite age group.
You know, at that age, they just love you.
Oh, I hope so.
No matter what.
That's true.
They think you're wonderful no matter what.
They answer, and they want to learn everything. Yeah.
So tell us, how did you come to go to Ethiopia?
Well, I had some friends that I went to Bible school with, and they were headed to the mission field, and they were talking about doing their survey trip. And I kind of followed them on Facebook and stayed in touch with them that way, and did some praying for them and helped do a little fundraising for them, but I really didn't get to do a lot with them. And so they were talking about wanting to take a school on as part of their mission there, and so they asked me if I would be interested. And hey, who's going to say no to that? So I went on a survey trip and was there for 2 weeks and got to meet some of the students and see the mission at the school and see what the vision was for the school and for the community around the school, and see some of the poverty and some of the definite needs that they have for true Christian beliefs. They're very religious people, but it's not for the Christ that we follow. So it's hard. So I fell in love with the people and immediately knew that that's what I was going to be doing for a while.
And so off you went.
I did.
Tell us about the day that you're literally packing up to depart the United States and head out on your first endeavor.
Well, I sold everything. I didn't own anything when I left here. And I was nervous, but because my family has a history of doing missions things previously, that it was easy to go. It was easy. I had my family support. Nobody really knew much about Ethiopia, and so it was easy to say, okay, hey, this is where I'm moving. And my family was all supportive of me, and they helped fund. The fundraising was the most difficult part. Is trying to raise the money that you need to get the stuff that you need to get.
Yeah.
Did you fly by yourself?
There was another teacher that came, and she helped with us for 2 years. And then she decided that she needed to be home to be with her grandchildren. She was an older lady, and she wanted to be near her parents who were aging and not in the best of health. So she moved back to California, and that's where her grandchildren and her parents are. So she was able to be with them again. So the last year I was by myself completely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Flying solo over there in Ethiopia.
So what was it like, living in Alaska for so long and stepping off the plane into Ethiopia?
The temperature was vastly different. But the good thing is I came during rainy season. So the rainy season usually means torrential rains every day. So you go through a torrential rain, and then the sun will come out and dry everything almost immediately. And then a torrential rain, and then everything dries up immediately. And when we got to the house the first day, we were trying to paint, and nothing would dry because it's all oil-based paint. And it was so wet outside. No. And we couldn't move any furniture in. There was no running water in the house. And I thought, what have I got myself into? This is crazy. Lord, are you sure this is where you want me? But I stuck it out, and we solved the problems that needed to be solved, and everything worked out. And I absolutely loved it. I had a great place to live. They got me a little house by myself, a couple of blocks from the school, so it was really easy to go back and forth. So,
did you ever have any doubt, Allison, about whether or not this was truly where God was calling you, and how did you work through that if you did?
Oh my goodness, my family was a huge support. My sister, a couple of times I would call, and my sister was just my biggest supporter. And my parents sent a package where my sister and my mom had sat down, and they sent me 60 little packages. It says, when you're in doubt, read one. And they had numbers on them, and you open one up and it said, read this scripture, draw a picture of what you think that means. One said, God is the God of creation. So go out and take pictures of his creation, and one thing that pops into your mind, write an email about that. And so I think without the help of my family, I would have never stayed.
What a great
idea. It's a great idea. I know. I'm sitting here thinking that's a great idea.
Wow.
Took them a lot of time and a lot of effort.
It did.
To come up with that.
And I think it was the couple 3 times that I called in absolute tears going, what have I done? I just want to come home.
Oh my goodness.
But again, they were like, no, you said that this is where God wants you. Is this really where God wants you? I'm like, yes, I know this is where God wants me. So they're like, okay, then stick it out. Do something. Get out. Go see the people. Go mingle with your friends that you know will lift you up, and go do ministry with a group of people that is in the area. So I met a lot of Dutch people, Dutch believers there, and I have a really tight bond now with some Dutch believers there in Ethiopia. I know, of all places.
I know. Were you living in a city, in a compound, or were you living out?
I was in a compound, but it's more like a town. Okay, so the town is the same size as Anchorage, but it's fairly spread out. And so we were at one end of it. But we lived right across our school was right across the street from the international school. So that helped with the little bit of English I had.
I want to go back to what you were just talking about, because I think that there's really something to that, because I think a lot of times we can get tripped up on what God's will is for our lives because we're looking for that absolute certainty that we know what we're doing is what he wants us to do. And from just hearing your story and how you work through that, it's not always like that. You don't have that absolute certainty. You're going to face those doubts. It's going to be tough to stick in. It's going to take discipline and grit.
Yeah.
Share with us a little bit about how you just continue to stay focused on his plan for why he wanted you there.
Getting into a church, that was number one priority with me. And so we needed to find a church home that we could be a part of there in Ethiopia. When you leave the United States and you have all these options of places that you can go and you can worship, and then you go into a situation like that, and there's one in the town that I live in, and it's Dutch, so it's Dutch Reformed. So I there are some differences in the way we worship and some differences in some of the beliefs we had. So, but I love the people so desperately. It was funny, the first Sunday, my little driver took us into town, and he said, "Oh, take you to the white church?" And I said, "Yes, please." And so he pulled up in front of the Mormon Tabernacle there in our town. And I was like, "No, this is probably not the one I want to go to. So is there another one?" And he said, yes, I will take you. So he took us to the Dutch Reformed Church. And so I got to know some of the people that way. But it's entertaining. And then once some other missionaries came into our town, I was able to travel to a local church in the capital city, which is about 45 minutes away. And I was able to worship with Bethel. And I loved my Bethel people. I love my Bethel church. And that was with the other missionaries I was a part of. And I got to be a part of their ministries out there. And I loved it. Then I was home. That was my church home. And anytime I was down, there was some British people there. There was Ethiopians there. There was other Americans there. There were some Canadians there. And I could call them and say, "Hey, I'm just really having a rough day. Can you just say a prayer with me?" And immediately it was not, "Oh, yeah, I'll pray for you." It was, "Okay, dear Lord." And they started immediately. And you really felt God's presence. You felt, you had desperate needs for a closeness with him when you're so separated from anything that you need him more. You feel like you need him more when you're far away from the complacency.
You don't know God is all you need until he's all you have.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, that's it.
Allison, take us to that first person that you just really connected with over in Ethiopia, whether it be a child or a friend or just somebody you met there. When was that first time you just had a connection with somebody?
The very first one was probably the director of the school. We were kind of dropped off, and then they introduced us to the people, and then the missionaries that we were working with all went back to the capital city. So we were left in this town by ourselves. And so trying to figure out luggage, trying to figure out furniture for our house, trying to figure out the start of things, trying to get all of that sorted was rough at first. And being alone and going, what in the world? And still not having any water at our house. You had to make major decisions. And so the director of the school said, "Okay, do you have a driver?" And I said, "Yes, we have a driver." So our driver was able to take us places. And he said, "Okay, go to a resort. Take a shower. You will feel better." And so we joined a resort just so we could take showers once a week.
Really?
At the beginning, before we had water at the house. And then, but he had always included me as part of his family. So when my family came to visit, we would go out and we would do something special together. And when he got married, he had me as one of his groomsmen, in quotes. Because I was his best friend. And so I was part of their wedding, and then they lost a baby. They had a miscarriage. And so we went out there, and I sat there on the front porch and couldn't speak a lick of the language they were doing. But I sat on that porch, and I made the traditional soup that you make for a woman who's just had a baby, and just being there with the family. And I cut heads off of chickens and gathered eggs and ground barley, everything with this family, and multiple generations on one compound. And you just kind of float around to whichever house and, "Oh, do you need help today? Okay, I'll come help you." And about 2 of them spoke English. So it was fun to be a part of a family too, a family dynamic, and you get to see how close knit they are. The fact that nobody shuts their doors. People float in and out, and there's coffee happening all the time, and food, and the neighbor comes over. "Okay, come and eat. It's eating time. Let's come eat." And then they walk out. But I got to be a part of this family, and I really felt tight with them. Yeah.
How do you think that could impact our own culture here to have more of that?
I took a class on cultural development, and that was so insightful, learning that about individualistic culture versus community culture. And Americans are so, this is mine. This is mine. This is mine. I got it. I purchased it. Or it was given to me. It was a gift for me. And we had a group of students come, and they washed the students' feet and gave them a pair of shoes. And at first, we were very careful about what sizes and making sure that the sizes fit the kids. And then it got towards the end, and once we got to the older kids, we ran out of their sizes because we hadn't, their feet grow between the time that we measured them and the time that the group came. And so we talked to a couple of the teachers, and the teacher said, just give them shoes too big. And I said, oh, because they can grow into them? And he said, no, for their family. That the shoes that we were giving them, that they would be wearing, would not just be for them. It would be for their whole family.
Really?
For a brother or sister or a mother and father. Somebody whoever needs it, it belongs to them. The other lady that I was working with, Susan Tarkey, she crocheted blankets for the kids. And she finished a blanket, and she would give it to the kid, and the kid would come back the next day, and she was like, my brother loved it. She's like, wait, I made that for you. Well, I know, but my brother needed it. He was cold, so I put it around him. So the thought of community versus everything belongs to me, I think is something that we really need to, that's something we need to work on, I think.
I would have to agree. We're starting to see, I won't mention any names, but some of these platforms where people are swapping houses and sharing, kind of opening their homes up to be like hotels. We're starting to see humanity trust each other again, and that's one of the beginnings of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to see that happening on a larger scale, but it'd be great to have that impact on a smaller scale as well.
Being able to have your home open
Yeah.
for people to come in, neighbors to come in, or, people that to just come in and be like, hey, this is something I need. Okay.
Instead, we're that call ahead. I'll be there in 3 days. Is that going to work for
Exactly.
you?
Right.
Don't dare knock on anybody's door.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really bad. I think everybody knows you better call me if you're coming to my house because I'm not opening my door.
That's understandable, Betty.
Yes.
It truly is.
So, Allison, is there, I'm sure you have all kinds of stories, but is there one, maybe somebody that you've met or something that happened that just sticks out in your mind that you want to share with us?
I would like to share about Teddy. Teddy was a very devout Ethiopian Orthodox, very strict, go to church every day. The call, not really a call to prayer like we have heard before, but the Bible studies that are their prayers that they would announce. He had them memorized, things like that. He was very, very, make sure that you go to heaven. So I have to make sure I worship the angels and I worship Mary, and I have posters up in my house of Gabriel and very tight with the Orthodox Church, and you give every day and you fast twice a week and all of these things that are so important to the Orthodox people. He was very devout, and I worked with him for the first year and a half, and he was very much my helper when I was the director of the school, which I was so glad he was there to help me because he was my liaison for my language part of it. And I was so excited about Teddy when we were standing outside on the playground, and I said, Teddy, we're going out to Bethel for church. Would you be interested in coming to hear Pastor Eric? Oh, yes. And I was, number one, shocked that he was so enthusiastic about his yes, and that he was so enthusiastic about wanting to come to our church, because it's nothing, Bethel Bible Baptist Church is not the same as Orthodox Church of Ethiopia. But he was willing to come. And the very first Sunday he was there, Eric led him to the Lord. And it was so impactful on his life that I have seen him go from being strict Orthodox to making amends with his family and making amends with people who have hurt him in the past. And for him to be on his knees crying in prayer because he wants to be an apostle of Christ. And just the love that he had for for God now, and the fact that he's now witnessing to others and bringing other people into the Christian faith, that it just blew my mind. And he's an incredible teacher. He still teaches for the school, but he wants to be a Bible student so desperately.
What a cool story.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
He's a cool guy.
What was your typical day like?
My typical day was very similar to most teachers' days. You wake up in the morning, make a cup of coffee, you pack your bag for the day, go in, depending on how many classes I had, depending on when I would get to the school. But mostly I would work with the 4-year-olds through the junior hires. So I had classes most of the day, almost every day. So I was very busy with the kids. And even when I wasn't, I was in and out of other classrooms, hanging out, disturbing them.
I can see that.
Playing with the kids on the playground. I learned some jump rope tricks, which was pretty fun. Playing jacks. They play a type of jacks with stones.
Oh,
and
really?
So you toss them up in the air and you have to like gather. You remember playing jacks? Mm-hmm. And so it was just with stones. And so the kids would teach me different things and play all kinds of stuff. And they just laughed that I couldn't speak their language. And they would try and make me practice. On, hulet, so, sarat, amist. And I'm like, okay, I got it.
That's a big jump, age difference for junior high.
It is.
What did you teach mostly?
Mostly English. When we first got there, because we were just taking over the school and just bringing in English as a curriculum, we didn't have any kind of curriculum. So we were trying to bring stuff back from the States that would be the homework stuff that you would give your kids in the summer. You're just like, here, work on this during the summer. This will keep you caught up. Yeah, that doesn't work as a school curriculum very well. So, but we would use that, and that would kind of jump off from there. But I got to teach some science. I got to teach Ethiopian history, which was very interesting because as Americans, we learn history all the way from day one. Mm-hmm. I mean, you ask any kindergartner what 4th of July is, and they can tell you what 4th of July is. They know that it's Independence Day. They know that Abraham Lincoln was a president. They know that George Washington was a president. But, as they go up, you learn all these things. But the Ethiopians don't learn until their 11th grade. And so I was like, these kids need to know something. Our plan was to take them to the History Museum at the end of the year. So I said, let's see what we can learn. So I pulled stuff up on Wikipedia and printed stuff off. And we learned Ethiopian history.
And did they make it to the museum?
They did, and I was so proud because we walked into the museum and the kids saw things that we had talked about or we saw pictures of from the internet, and they were so excited. They were running around. Oh, look, miss, I see a coin. It has a circle on it and a cross because that's when the Christians started coming into Ethiopia.
Oh,
I
wow.
said, very good. I'm so proud of you. Oh, look, this is Menelik's crown. You remember Menelik? He was the one that brought us roads and telephones. Yes, I'm so proud of you. Good job.
That's neat.
So,
There's nothing like bringing it to life like that.
Yeah.
To make it all make sense.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It was fun.
So then after your day was over teaching, what did the rest of the day look like for you?
Grading. Again, typical teacher stuff. Mm-hmm. I would always try to take a walk out in the evening. Once the sun went down about 6 o'clock, we would just wander about the neighborhood and everybody was out walking around. So you see students or you purchase street food for dinner. And then you just kind of meander around, pick up the supplies you would need for the next day, bananas or milk or things like that from local vendors. And you just... the little souks around the corner, get some tomatoes to make your dinner, something like that.
Okay, you mentioned you would go to the local vendors and get your food. How is the food different from what we have here?
It is completely different. The bread that they use is a fermented like tortilla, and it sits for 3 days before you can roll it out and cook it. And so it's an acquired taste for sure. It's called injera, and they eat it at every meal.
Did you learn to like it?
I did.
You did? You developed the taste for it,
I
huh?
did. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty quick. Some people like it right away, and then some people, the whole time they're in Ethiopia, they're like, so yuck. But in sauces, they love sauces. Chickpea sauce and spicy tomato sauce and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, earlier, before we started the show, you were sharing some of the things that you learned how to do. I want you to share those.
Okay, so I learned how to grind barley. So barley, one of the steps for barley is you have to wash it and winnow it like you would read in the Bible. Like they would go to the winnowing where they would throw it up in the air and then the chaff would blow away in the wind. But they would do it out near the road because if there wasn't wind, the wind from the cars would blow the chaff away.
Really?
And then they would wash it again and lay it out on tarps. And then they have a giant mortar and pestle, like 3-foot tall mortar and pestle, and they would just bang that thing until it was ground, and then they could bake with it or whatever they were going to do with it. I learned how to roast my own coffee beans, which I never drank coffee until I moved to Ethiopia.
Really?
Because they do coffee ceremonies every single day, and everybody drinks coffee all the time.
What's a coffee ceremony?
A coffee ceremony is a welcoming thing. It's a welcome to our neighborhood, welcome to our house, welcome to celebration of any sort. And so they lay out the green plastic grass on the ground, and they would set up their little stove on top of there and sit on a itty bitty stool, probably a foot off the ground, and they would grind the coffee or roast the coffee, grind the coffee, boil the coffee, and serve you coffee right there right in front of you. And it was a really touchy. It's a very sweet thing to do when somebody offers to do it for you. But I learned how. I learned how to do all of it. I can roast my own coffee, and I've even learned how to pasteurize my own milk.
Those are some interesting skills for sure.
Not necessarily usable in America, but
but it's nice to put on a resume or something.
Exactly. Skills. I can roast coffee.
What would you say is something that God taught you about himself in your time over there? I'm sure there's many things, but is there anything that just comes to mind?
Number one is reliance on him. Reliance on him. Again, in the States, you have the things, I need something, I'll just run up to the store. I need a little boost of church, so I'll run to church and do an activity, and then I'll feel better. But it was the reliance on him for everything, from the fact that there was no water in the house for 6 months to...
I don't know how you did that, really.
6 months?
6 months, no water. There's no power today. How are we going to accomplish the things that we need to get accomplished? There's no access to phones. They've shut off the phones. The government like to do odd things like that just to show that you have a little bit of power. And so you're just relying on God to keep you safe, to keep you healthy, to get you where you got to get, out walking around. There was some riots last September. And for safety was a big thing because there were several deaths that they had in the town that I lived in. And so there was a while that it was very nerve-wracking. And my dad would call often and be like, "Hey, you're coming home." And I'm like, No. God's still working on me. It's okay. No. You need to come home. No, I'm okay, Dad. Okay, you can stay. A couple more months.
I remember those days.
Do you?
I remember your mom and dad. They would request prayer for you, and they'd put out little bulletins of what was happening. And I remember when you didn't have water. There was many people praying for you to get water.
It was such a blessing when we finally got it. We let it run for a couple of days just to know that it was running, but it was really good. We needed to get a new pump to pump the water. It's gravity fed into the house. So we had a tank on top of the house, but it wasn't enough pressure from the city. There wasn't enough water pressure to push it up into the tank on top of the roof.
Oh,
wow.
So because it wasn't on top of the roof, it wasn't getting into the house. So once we got a pump to get it up to the tank, then it was fine.
Allison, one more question. I know it's time for us to close, but Would you be willing to go talk to women's groups or to youth groups if someone heard the program and wanted you to? Are you willing to do that?
I am willing to do that. I would love to share the idea of missions with anybody who wants to hear. I think that missions is something that is underrated in the churches, and I think that if people had more experiences with missions, then they would be more willing to say, okay, this is what God commanded us to do, so this is what I'm going to do.
How would they contact you?
They can contact me by email is probably the easiest way. Do you want my email address?
If you don't mind giving it.
No, not a problem. Allison, ALLISON .Turnbull, TURNBULL at yahoo.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Allison, for joining us today in the studio and just sharing your heart and your story. It's so neat to just get that insight behind the scenes and just hear about what God's doing in your life and how He's using you in such an impactful way. It's awesome.
Well,
and it's so good to have you back, too.
I'm glad to be home. I'm glad to be home.
And that's another Living Well radio program, and we want to thank you so much for joining us again this Wednesday at 1 p.m. And don't forget to join us again next Wednesday for our guest that we'll bring to you.